All right, good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Chaf and Chaf Aleph, Maseches Eruvin. So we left off. We had Abaye asking a bunch of kashas, mostly regarding Pasi B'irois. So top line and Chaf Amud Aleph. Bay Minei Abaye Mirabo Chatzer Shereisha Nichnas Lebein Hapasin. Mahu. So let's say you have a case of we're talking about this pasi biras, right? But you have a chutzner, right? Now normally a chutzner is a yard which is shared by multiple people, and that chutzner, I guess the exit of the chutzner actually open into the pasi biras. So those of you who have the art scroll, has a very nice picture of it. We actually have a couple of nice pictures today. So as you see, the entrance of the chutzner protrudes out into the pasi biros. So it's directly into it. So can you carry from the pasi biros into the chutzner back? So Malay says mutter. It's mutter over there. So such a case is, since it's what's called the chutzner is it's a rishus yachid, and therefore the other area is also permitted. It's not just a rabbim or anything like that. So therefore it will be mutter. So he says mutter. So shtayimai. What about two? Let's say there are two chutzneros open into there. And now you can see from the same side. Once again, here's the second picture in the art scroll. So I don't know if you guys can see the picture. So you see there's two entrances open into there. Now, and actually in this picture right here, I'm going to point out this other entrance, which did I hold there? There's there's an entrance, there's a connection between the two chatzeros, not outside, where the pasi, where the boards are. Rather, before you get to the exit, there's another wall in between there that's sort of an entrance in between the two. So what about shtayimai? So if you two chatzeros open into Samarlei, Aser, he says Aser. Samar Rav Huna, so he said, so shtayim Aser, v'afil irvu. Says not only is two Aser, but even if there's an eruv between the two chatzeros, between one another, it's still Aser. Why? People say that what's going to happen? People might have thought that to go ahead and carry from one chatzah to the other is mutter, right? Because there is pasi biros at the end, so you can carry one to the other. But that was not true. The reason why they were carrying from one to the other is because there was a separate entrance or connection between the two of them. So therefore, and people would not be aware of that other entrance because it's back in between their walls, and therefore people might confuse and say the chatzeros don't need an eruv, and therefore no. It would be usher because of people might say eruv moed lebein hapasim. So Rav Amar eruv mutter. No, it says if there's an eruv there, it's mutter.
Are we talking about eruv chatzeros or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just to clarify,
yeah,
we were talking about an eruv before, and
but eruv means eruv means like connection. So they were connected. The eruv chatzeros are connected through the pas, or through whatever bread, in order for those two domains to be sort of like one.
Right.
So you say over here, Amalei Abai l'Rava. So it says Abai l'Rava Tani Misay l'Chai. That should rise the support for you. This is Chatzer Roisha Echad Nichnas Levin Hapasin. If you have one Chatzer that's opened up into the pasin, like the first case we just discussed about, then mutar l'talta meserkel ben hapasin. Ben hapasin tzarich. It's mutar to go ahead and carry from the chatzer into the ben hapasin or ben hapasin back, which is exactly as we said. And if al shtayim aser, but if there's two of them, two chatzeros open into the pasin, it's no good. Aser, then it's aser. When there's no eruv, but if there was an eruv between the two chatzeros, then it would be mutar. We mutter. So to the Rav Huna. Let's say it's a kasha Rav Huna. Rav Huna said the exact opposite. He said even with the eruv it's aser, and here we see even with the eruv it's mutter. So Rav Huna hasam dahadran va'arvan. Over there, in other words, where are they connected? They were connected twice. Once in the front and once in the middle. They can see. So since everyone can see, right? Look at this picture here. It's a beautiful picture. Since everyone can see that even by the passage that the two chaseros were connected to one another. Therefore, they know the reason why you can carry from one to the other is because there is a eruv. So therefore, there's no hidden entrance or connection in the back. People can see clearly that the two chatzeros are connected to one another without the use of going into the pasi biros and walking back, and therefore, no one will confuse it with other cases. And finally, so Yabshu mayim b'Shabbos mahu. Let's say the water of the well or the pit dries out on Shabbos. Now the whole heter is to go ahead and be able to go ahead and use water, right? Whether it's for the animals or not. Let's say there's no water. The water dries up. So Amarlei, klum nasa mechitza el b'shel mayim ein kan mechitza ein kan. The only reason why we allow it is for the water. If there's no water, there's no mechitza. So by Rav Yevshu mayim b'Shabbos hu bo b'Shabbos mahu. So let's say the water dries out. And then it comes back, let's say later on, there's rains or something like that, and there's more water on Shabbos. So Abai says, you don't answer the case we tried out because it was asked earlier, we answered earlier, it was Aser. And also, you want to ask, no, if water comes on Shabbos, also, that's considered to be now all of a sudden there's water. So there's water, and there's walls, right? So now maybe does this become a wall or not? So the Havli Mechitza Asuv Shabbos. This is considered to be a mechitza that was made on Shabbos. The Tanya we learn in the Brayso. Kol Mechitza Hasuya b'Shabbos Bein b'Shageg Bein b'Mezid Bein b'Oines Bein b'Ratzon Shmei Mechitza. Any mechitza that was done on Shabbos, whether accidentally, purposely, right? It was done be'isser, it was done beheter, it was done anyway. A wall is a wall. So therefore, if there's water, now the water is mutter to go ahead and drink. Even though perhaps you can't go ahead and make the wall a wall on Shabbos. Nevertheless, if the wall is there and all of a sudden the water comes there, now you're allowed to use the walls, it becomes mutter. So there are questions. Wait, maybe that was only regarding the deraisa. The deraisa of the wall works in order to say that you'd be a chayv chatos for within that area to the outside, but to carry inside, maybe the mechitza is not good. So Rav Nachman said that you're not allowed to go ahead and carry inside. Amazid Itamar, he was talking about a case of amazid. A person does it b'mazid, right? He does it purposely. Then we're not going to go ahead and allow him to go ahead and carry with inside. And Omar Rabbi Elazar Hazarek Lebein Apasi Habiros Chayv. One who goes ahead and throws into Apasi Habiros, he takes from the outside of Rabim into this area enclosed by the four corners. He is Chayve Chatas. So it says Pshita Ilav Mechitzi Heikim Shtar Limalos. If it wasn't mutter, so how would he allow him to go ahead and basically extract or take water? Obviously, it's on a deraisa level, right? It's considered to be Mechitza. So not like Tzricha David Ben Kain Pasim Biros B'Shisa Rabim. No, maybe let's say there's no well, and he made one inside the public way, and he put the four corners of the walls, and he throws within there and takes it out. That one is chayiv. So he says Hanami Pshit. It should be pretty obvious why. If there wasn't an actual halachic wall, then how would we permit it ever to go ahead and fill up water? So it must be that it is considered to be a real wall, and therefore it's a real wall in order for a person should be chayiv chatas. So answer is low. Even though, let's say it was in the Mishis Rabbim, and there a lot of people walk through it. So a lot of people walk through it. Maybe you would think that maybe it's no different than the rest of the Mishis Rabbim. Therefore, no, we say that's a chiddush. But is this even a chiddush? So that the rabbin come through, they're not mevatel the walls. Rabbi Allah's already taught this once. The time with the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda he said, if the Rosh Hashanah goes through a pasi biras, so you should make sure that the foot traffic goes around there. The Chamim says it doesn't make a difference. It's fine. So the Chamim is basically the halacha that Rabbi Elazar taught, that as long as you have pasi biros, even if it's not just a rabbin, where the rabbin walk through it, it's still considered to be a private domain, right? Or one to be chayiv. So Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar, and so Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar were both saying that they were teaching this the strength of the halachic walls that is considered to be a wall. So Gemara says, so why don't you learn from there? So imi hasam havamina kandle spirule. Maybe he was teaching you that just this is what the Chachamim say, but you know how Chachamim kamash malon kandle spirule, and therefore he taught that no, this is how he hold. And velema ha velo lema. So why don't you just only say one of the halachas, not say the other? So the one answer is no. Said no. One was said. I mean, for the other, no, it was really they said the case of the machlokes, and then from there, he inferred that this is the halacha, and we don't care if the rabbin will walk through it. It's considered to be a rishus ha rabbin. Fine, 2 dots. So over at the bottom, 4 lines from the bottom, and the Chafim and Aleph, those who came late. So mutter it's mutter to go ahead and bring the walls in closer, right? To take the 4 corners and bring them in closer, as long as there's still room for the animal. We said the Rosh Varubo, we defined that as 2 amos. So in other words, remember, because if the walls are just basically around the water, so you're going to take the water into the Rosh Hashanah and then you're going to extract. So we want whatever was being carried or whatever is being used, whether it's a bucket or a pail, that to remain inside the Pasi Beiros, within the walls of the around the well. Now, Tanan Hasa, we learn over there, Lo Yamod Adam Rishis Rabim, V'yishte Rishis Yachid, Rishis Yachid V'yishte Rishis Rabim, Elim Kain, Machnis Roisha V'rubo L'makom Shehu Shais. A person is standing, he's drinking, and if a person should not stand in the Rishis Rabim and drink from the Rishis Yachid, or vice versa, because he's holding a kli, right? He's holding a container, and we don't want him to go ahead and carry one from the other, because we don't trust him. Let's say, this, right, ended by table is Meshus Rabim, and I'll actually take a drink, right? And he leans over and he drinks, right? So what's going to happen? We're worried that he's going to go ahead and bring the kli with him. So unless where his head and most of his body is in the area where the water is, he should not drink. V'chein and v'chein begas. And so too, when it comes to a gas, a wine press, this has to do more with a person is not chayiv and meiser. If stuff is eaten casually on the field, but once it's taken off the field, then it's considered to be, you have to take meiser from it. So what is on the field? So he shouldn't go ahead and eat basically, grapes or wine and drink from it. If most of his body's out, but the wine is in the inside, or vice versa. Now, we say Gabi Adam when it comes to a person. Now, so forget the wine press case. Let's go back to the case of the Pasi Biros, of the drinking the water with the Shabbos. So Gabi Adam Ha'amar Debai Rosh Rubo, but Gabi Para. What about the case of the animal? The animal, we have this water pit, and he wants his animals to drink on Shabbos. So Gabi Para Mibainam La Rosh Rubo Lo. Does he require, right, the animal to be Rosh Ruba or not? So if you say a case, so now is the owner, let's say, is holding a dish, right, for it to drink from, right? He's holding the dish and he's not holding the animal's head. So if the animal moves away, he's going to move the dish with the animal, and then he'll carry it. So therefore, we don't want the animal's head or most of his body outside. So that's not the question. That for sure you can't do, because you need the animal's most of his head and his body in order to feed it. So ask right? We're asking a question of where he's holding the kli and he's also holding the animal. So what is the halacha there? We actually learned that. It says, right? As long as the animal has his head and his body and most of its body inside, it could drink. So my lab, the naka love and naka is that talking about a case of when do we say this? In other words, when he's holding both. So Gemara says, no, lo, the naka man, lo naka love. Maybe it's only talking about a case of he's not holding the animal. Then the animal has to be inside, but if he's holding the animal, we're not worried that the animal is going to go ahead and move out the outside. So so 1 second. Well, if he's holding the kli, right, and he's not holding the animal, is it mutter at all to go ahead and give it water to drink from? Is he allowed to hold this, dog dish or cow dish, right, and hold it so the animal drinks from it? Well, Tani will in a brayso loyma loy adam mayim v'tein b'Shabbos lifnei behemto. The sims a person should not go ahead and fill up water and give to his animal to drink on Shabbos. Rather, he's allowed to go ahead and fill it and pour it in front of the animal and let it drink. So this seems to say that you can't go ahead and give, right, your animal to drink, right, if he's not holding the animal, because then he might go ahead and carry it. So Gemara says, no, no, that over there was actually a completely different case. And Amar Abaye, and we're going to, this little picture on the side of the Gemara is actually this case, and the Arsel actually has a good picture also. But I'll post in a second. So over here, we're talking about a case of an avus is basically a trough, right? It's used to go ahead and fill it with water, and the animal drinks in there, right? Which is standing in the Rosh Hashanah. And it's at least 10 tefachim tall, and 4 wide, 4 tvachim wide. So now it's its own rishus yachid. And part of the edge of this trough, right, or this right, is extended into the into the walls, right, as you can see for that picture, right, with the animal drinking from it, and therefore says this case. And those of you, the art school has like a little better picture, right? So picture of the art school, right? So you see, he's standing at the end. So it's saying that he shouldn't go ahead and basically fill it up and walk around with this over the Rishus HaYachid, because he might go ahead and carry it into the other, where the domain where the animal is. Rather, he should just go ahead and pour it into the trough, and then the animal can go ahead and drink it. Why? Gzeira. Perhaps you'll see that there's some area on the other end of the trough that needs to be fixed. He'll come fix it. Go ahead and bring the bucket with him. He'll go ahead and be caring for the Rishus HaYachid to the Rishus HaRabbi. So therefore, don't go ahead and go around the trough with your kli. Rather, empty the kli into the trough, and that's how you can go ahead and give water to your animal. So it really was not talking about the same case as our talk. It wasn't talking about a person holding a container and having his animal feed and drink from it. Rather, it was talking about a separate, different case when he had the trough own large Rishus HaYachid trough extending into the Pasi Biras. The Gemara says, wait, what a person mechayiv in such a case, right? A person is going as he's carrying stuff from one corner to the other corner in Rishus HaYachid, and then he decides, after he picked it up, after he did the akira, he decides he's going to go take it outside. So he didn't do the akira, right? The mindset, the uprooting from the kli from this location to go ahead and put it down. Rather, he meant to go ahead and just keep it in the same rishus. And then as he was carrying it, he decided to go ahead and take it outside. So he's pater because his original akira was not meant for this reason. So the chor in this case, the guy was carrying the pail to keep it inside, and then he saw there was a problem on the trough and the back end. Oh, I have to go fix it. So l'chari, you shouldn't be chai for that. So Ella, rather zinim the masakin le v'hadar ayvale v'kamayel mishus harabim the Rishus HaYachid. You're right. For taking it out, he wanted to be chai because when he uprooted it, he didn't have it in mind. But right, he put it down, he fixed the trough, and then he's going to bring it back inside. When he brings it back inside, that's what we're concerned about. That's where we're concerned about taking from the Rishus HaRabim into the Rishus HaYachid. Now, Ikadamri, some have a slightly different version of that which we just said. Gabi Yadam, regarding a person going ahead and drinking when he's drinking from one rishus to the other. Hakamina. We said the sagile b'rosh of arubo. As long as his head and the majority of his body is where the water is, then he can go ahead and drink from a cup or whatever it is, because he's not going to go ahead and carry it outside. So, however, gabi par, but what about the animal? Misagile b'rosh of arubolo. Does he need the animal's head and most of his body or not? So, Gemara says, hey, if you're talking about a case of where he's holding the kli and he's holding the animal, then it's obvious that that Rosh Haruba is fine. Rather, we're talking about a case of where he holds the kli and he's not holding the animal. What is the halacha there? Samarlei, Tani Sua, right? We learned over there. So we say over there. So as our Mishnah says, in other words, you have to have the animal the inside. So my lab the nakid man of loy nakila is not time in a case of where he's holding the kli and not holding the animal, and the Chara still says the animal has to be mostly inside. So it says lo the nakid man of a nakila. No, we're talking about a case of where he's holding the animal and he's holding the kli. It's also logical to say because if he's holding the kli and not holding the animal, mishari, is he able to go ahead and give the animal to drink? So we've seen the same brayso we brought earlier, right? A person is not allowed to go ahead and give water to his animal or take water and give it to his animal. Rather, you should go ahead and fill up a trough or something and let the animal drink from there. So you see, if he wasn't holding the animal, he wouldn't be able to do it in the anyways. So that which we said, he's allowed to go ahead and give the animal to drink. It must be talking about a case where he's holding the animal and therefore and still Rosh Haruba inside it. So Gemara says, no, no, it was said on this. Actually, we'll see the real Gemara that these are both based on. Abai says, no, in that case, it was talking about we're talking about a trough that was standing in the Rishus HaRabim. And Gavoa Sar Tvachim V'Reichev Arba, and it was 10 by 4. the Reisha Nichnas Levena Pasin. And part of it extended into the area between the boards. And therefore, in such a case, we're saying that you can't go ahead and carry, and hold the container right over the trough and, bring it close to the animal. Rather, just pour the contents into the trough and let the animal drink from there. Why? Because what's going to happen? Perhaps when he goes around and is carrying the container, he sees, there's something wrong on the end of the trough, and he's going to carry the bucket with him, and he'll be carrying the bucket from the Shus HaYachid into the Shus HaRabim. So Gemara once again asks the same question as we had in the first version. Would one be chayiv for carrying the bucket in such a manner? One goes ahead and he takes from one. He wants to remove something one corner of his yard to the other corner of his yard, and he picks it up. And as he's walking, he decides he's going to go ahead and take it outside the chutzner. Then he's pater because why? Because when he originally picked it up from one corner of the chutzner, he did not intend to pick it up to bring it outside. Rather, he intended to pick it up to leave it in the same rishus. But now that he took it out of the outside, he'd be potter. So how could you say you would have been chayiv for carrying the pail outside? So the Gemara says, no, Elazin, the Masakin, rather he'll go ahead and fix it. Then he'll bring it back, and by bringing it back, then he'll be chayiv for bringing it back from the Rishus Rabbim into the Rishus HaYachid. Fine, new case. Toshma, come and listen. All right, we're around 8 lines or so from the bottom on Chaf and Beis. Toshma, Gamal, Shareisha, Verubo, Mifnim. Well, let's say a camel. All right, this is a similar case. A camel whose head and most of his body is on the inside. Oivsin, Oiso, Mifnim. You're allowed to go ahead and stuff it with food. So you basically, what are you carrying? You're carrying the food, right? And you're taking the food and you're feeding him a lot of food because you're about to go on a long voyage and you want to feed your animal, your camel, before, and therefore he fills it up. Now, so isn't basically stuffing with food the same as basically holding a kli, right? And right, when he's giving the kli and he's holding the animal. The kabayina rosh verubo. We see over there, since he's holding the animal to stuff his face, so he's holding both the animal and the food. It should be no different than holding the animal and holding the kli. And nevertheless, it says you need rosh verubo. Since he has a long neck, so therefore, since it has a long neck, if it wasn't completely inside or a majority inside, then you might come and carry it. But maybe an animal with a short neck would be okay. And Tashma, come and listen. An animal, right? It says over here, behema. It doesn't say gamal. It says behema. An animal whose head was an inside, they ought to go ahead and force feed it. Ibus stuffing the animal is the same as basically giving it water to drink while you're holding the kli and holding the animal. And it says over there, Rosh Verubo. So my behema. So the answer is no. What does it mean? Behema nami diktani gamal. What does it mean when it says over here animal? It's actually referring to a camel, right? Ivatani behema vahatani gamal. It's two different ones. One Bryce says camel, then it says behema. So obviously it's not the same thing, right? So the Gemara says no. Were they written together? It wasn't written in the same case, right? It wasn't like first part of a brisa says behema, second part of a brisa says gamal. No. It's two separate cases. So maybe in one yeshiva, when they taught it, they said referring to a gamal, and another one, when they just called it behema, but it's referring to a camel. So Tanya Achi, but similarly we learned Rabbi Elazar Oyser begamal hoya b'tzarach. He taught that in case a camel is usher unless it's all in the same rishus because it has a long neck. And Amar Rabbi Yitzchak.
Yo, hang on. There's been a long mahal. So what's our maskana here now? That with an animal, as long as you have.
So if you're
holding the animal and holding the kli, you don't need rosh haverubo, or you do.
Right. So then you would not.
You would not. Only if you're not holding the animal.
We didn't. Right. We didn't bring a proof that it's required.
Okay.
Right. Correct. If it's a camel, you would need to. That we just said, because we said all the cases that we said you could do would be a camel, but other cases we haven't proved it. So if you're holding the animal and you're holding the kli, then l'chayra it's sufficient. It's sufficient even if it's not. But if you're only holding the the kli, right, and you're not holding the animal's head, right, and then the animal might move away and you might follow the animal. So therefore you don't want the animal standing too far. So therefore the animal has to be inside.
Right. Okay.
And Omar, Rabbi Yitzchak, 3 lines at the bottom, Bar Ada, Lo hutru pasi biros elo lo oile regalim bilvad. So pasi biros is only permitted for those being oile regel, those coming during during Yontif to come to the Beis Hamikdash. So this was basically enacted on their behalf. I've hatani lo hutru pasi biros elo legavi behema bilvad. This is for animals. This is my behema. Behemas lo oile regalim. It's for the animals of oile regalim. Adam. But a person, right? So he wants to go ahead and take water from the well. So matafis v'oila matafis v'yared, right? He must go, right? He has to, climb down and then drink down there, then climb back up. So Aini, is this true? Amar Rav Yitzchak, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, lahutru pasi biros el lebe'er mayim chayim bilvad. Right? So pasi biros was only for a fresh water well, right? Nice, and if it's for an animal, right, they don't care what type of, if it's maybe stored water, which is sort of gross, or fresh spring water. So why would it make a difference? So obviously, if you're talking about fresh spring water from the well, the chayr is for people, not for animals. So my answer is no, but the chaziladim, right? No, maybe it doesn't mean it's for people to drink. Rather, it means it has to be water that's fit for a person, but maybe it's still only for the animals. So Gufa, Lotra
now it's saying that this is only for a well of spring water, whereas before we were talking about a bore.
Right, correct. So according to Rav Yitzchak Bar Yehuda, so even though you can argue as to what kind of water is for, but you see, according to this opinion, why do you need fresh water? It must be that the fresh water maybe was only for human consumption and not animals. It was or also for humans, right? So he said, no, maybe it means that it has to be fit for humans, but maybe it's still only for animals. So, but you're right. It's not it's not clear held by everybody. So Gemara says, Gufa, loy hutra pasiviros ela behema bilvad. Aval adam metafis ve'ela metafis. You already should climb up and climb down. Pasiviros doesn't work for him. Only for he wants to go drink climb down. Let's say the walls are very, if it was sort of, small little, pit that he walks down, so you can sort of hold on to the sides. But if it's too wide for him to basically, be able to push on both sides to lower himself down. Even for a human, you can go ahead and draw up water. But and a person should not go ahead and fill up water and then give it to his animal in the kli, in his bucket. But actually, this is the brisa that we used before in the two different ikadamris, right? But he should rather go ahead and fill up fill the pail, then pour it in the trough. Then the animal will drink on its own, but he shouldn't go ahead and hold the kli with the animal. So if that's the case, you can't go ahead and lift up the kli to the animal. So what does pasibiros do? So the verse says, what do you mean? We're talking about you'll be able to go ahead and drink water for them, to take out water. So Ella, if that's the case, you can't go ahead and hold a kli while your animal is drinking. So why do we care? Why does there have to be enough space for an animal to have its head and most of its body in the inside? If you're not allowed to hold a kli, even if it's just a pit, so the animal drinks it, right? We don't care what the animal does. The animal's not carrying anything. He's just drinking the water. There's no problem of drinking water and the water traveling through its body, right? That's not carrying, right? So why do you need Rosh Hashanah if we're not talking about a case of where the guy is physically holding a pail or some sort of dish for the animal to be drink out of? So Rabbi Hakamai Eskinan, over here we're talking about a case of where the trough, like we saw pictures earlier, was basically a part of the Shis Rabbim sticking into the Pasibiros, and over there we're saying that you shouldn't hold a dish in that case because then you might come to extend it into the Rishus Ha-Rabbim. But generally in a case, one would be allowed to go ahead and give his animal to drink as long as there was enough space of Rosh Hashanah for his animal. And Omar,
wasn't the whole takana pasibiros for the Ole Regalim? Isn't that the whole?
Yes. Yes. Okay. So it was for that, and the question was it for humans? But remember, we also saw earlier that if someone made a pasibiros, right, without even water in the Shus HaRabim, one would be chayav for it. So why? Because you see that halachically it is considered to be walls, right? Now, they didn't come out of nowhere, but it is considered to be something which is now, halachically a wall, and therefore sometimes even though something's mechitza doesn't work, but we're saying in this case we'll allow these type of mechitzos to go ahead and be an effective wall. And the question is, okay, is it only for animals or is it also for humans? And that was the discussion we just had. And now, new case. Omar Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba Omar Rav Ein Burganin beBavel. There are no Burganin in Bavel. Now, Burganin are basically these little huts that normally at the edge of town, you go ahead and you would count your 2,000 amos, in order for Tchum Shabbos, to the edge of the town. So the town goes up to here, right? In those days, everything was all, close together, everything was together. And basically when you get outside the town, you're outside the town, right? There's no one of those outliers here, is much different. But you had the town, and it would basically, you count the 2,000 amos there, unless there were burganin, which were basically huts or something that wasn't really made to live in. But these houses, if those were within a karfef, within 70 2/3 amos, then instead of counting the 2,000 amos from the edge of town, you would count it from the edge of this burganin. So there were no burganin above it. V'loi pasibiros b'chutzars, and there was no pasibiros in chutzars. Now, when we say chutzars here, it's excluding Eretz Yisrael and Bavel, as we'll soon see. So, burganin didn't apply to Bavel, and pasibiros did not apply to chutz laras. Now, let's see. Burganin Bavel shchichi. Why the shchichi bitke? There was no burganin in Bavel because they had floods. They had common floods. I guess the rivers were overflowed from rain. And it would wipe out any of these things. So they didn't have burganin. They didn't have these burganins out there. So therefore, those halachas weren't there. And pasibiros b'chutzlaretz lo. Also pasibiros, they wouldn't have a chutzlaretz. Why? They would not have. Why? Deloy shchichi mesivasa, because there wasn't yeshivas there. So in addition to all the regalim, as Asi pointed out, there's also another reason, right? People would travel on, to go ahead and hear the Rosh Yeshivas. But the Rosh Yeshivas were only found in Bavel and Eretz Yisrael. They weren't found in Chutz La'aretz, and therefore pasibiros halach were not found in also not in Chutz La'aretz. Aval Ivchan and Avdina, but the opposite, right? They would have burganin in the Chutz La'aretz, and they would have pasibiros in Bavel. And he could offer some of a slightly different version. Amar Rav Yirmiyah ba'Abba Amar Rav Ein burganin u'pasibiros lo b'Bavel b'Chutz La'aretz. There was no burganin or pasibiros in Bavel or chutzars. Not why. Burganin Bavel lo, the sheichi lo. Why? Burganin Bavel would not have. As you saw, it was common to have the floods, and chutzars nami lo, the sheichi ganavi. And chutzars, they would not have burganin, these little huts. Why? Because there are many ganav, therefore they weren't safe. So therefore they wouldn't have burganin chutzarets and pasibiros Bavel lo. Why? There was the shchichi because there was no water. There wasn't a lot of water, so therefore there was no reason to have the wells or the pits with the around it, because they had a lot of water. Since they had a lot of water there, right? You didn't need the pasibiros because the water was very common. It wasn't like in Eretz Yisrael; it was much less common. So therefore you couldn't, because it was water. And chutzars nami lo deloy shchichi masivasa. In Eretz Yisrael they wouldn't have pasibiros. Excuse me. In chutzars they wouldn't have pasibiros because they didn't have yeshivas like they do in Eretz Yisrael. And Omar le Rav Chizda le Mari bereid Rav Huna bereid Rav Yirmiyah Rabba. So he said to him, Sa'ami asisu mi barnish le benishta de Daniel. We used to go from Barnish to the Beit Knisha to the shul of Daniel, Dahave Tlasa Parsi. That was 3 parsa far. B'Shabbos on Shabbos. So Gemara says, if that's the case, Amai Smachi. So what would you rely on? That's farther than 2,000 amos. How are you able to travel from the other? So he says, Aburganin. So he says, right, well, did you rely on burganin to extend the rishus? You know, it's chumas. So Amar Avua, Amar Avua, the Avu Mishmei Derav ain't burganin Bavel. Well, what do you mean? How could you rely on the burganin? I thought there's no burganin halachas in Bavel, as we taught earlier, right? Because burganin were wiped out typically from these floods. So Nafik Vachile Hanu Misavasa. So he basically showed him different towns that used to be there. There was, I guess, within this 70 2/3 amos. So in other words, there was actually little towns along the way that were really connected from Barnish to Daniel, and therefore it was not a problem of walking outside the Tzchum. And I guess they had these types of towns. It wasn't burganin, but they had these small little towns that were all destroyed, but they can see that there was some sort of remnants of these towns. And Amar Rav Chizda, Darish Mari Bar Mar. So now we're going to get into a couple of darshan, some psukim. So my dechsev. So those of you who haven't been enjoying the Eruvin as much, now we're going to get to a little left turn right now. So he says, "Ma'ad chsiv." What does the pasuk mean? L'chol tichla reisi kates rechava mitzvasecha mod. So it says to everything I've seen the end, right? But the Torah is too wide. In other words, there is no length. So davar zeh amar David v'lei pirshu, amar Iyo v'lei pirshu, amar Yecheskel v'lei pirshu, ad sheba Zechariah ben Ido pirshu. Right? This matter in terms of the size of the Torah was David said he didn't know how the Torah was too vast and too large to go ahead and measure. Eov didn't know, Yecheskel didn't know, but Zechariah did. So Amr David Villa Pirshu, the puzzle we just brought. The Chatichla Risi Kates, everything I've seen, right? A Kates, a limit, amount. However, but your mitzvahs are too grand, too much. And Amar Iya Villa Pirshu says Arucha Me'eretz Mida Ruchava Aminaya, right? Is referring to the Torah. It says larger than the earth and wider than the seas. There's no measurement. And Amar Yecheskel Villa Pirshu Yecheskel says the Chsiv Vayifra. It says Vayifros. Oisali lefanai, right? He spread out in front of me. V'hi ksuva panim v'achor v'kosav aleh kinim v'hega v'hi. And says, and I guess he spread out in front of him, and it was written on the inside and the outside, and it had kinim v'hega and vahi. What are those things? So kinim zo pranios shel tzadikim b'yolam hazeh. That's referring to the pranios, right? The sufferings of the tzaddikim in this world. That is the kinim. The chenu aimer says over there kinahi v'konel, right? And those the kinos, like those are lamenting. And the hege, and also the celebrating. That's referring to the reward given to the tzaddikim in the world to come. Right, and it says it will be singing, right, with the harp and music, right, and it says vahi, right, and that's referring to the pranios, the punishments of the rishayim in the world to come. It says over there, right, the things will occur, and I guess there'll be bad travesties that will come to them. I was referring to the pranios, but anyways, so this pasuk over here that Yecheskel was talking about was referring to the Torah. So it was referring to the Torah, and he says, right, it was all spread in front of him, but it was too vast. It was too much for him to describe. And then it says, Ad Sheba Zechariah ben Ido, until Zechariah ben Ido, and he explained it. The Chsiv Pasuk says, Vayomer Elai Mata Roya. So it says, what do you see? Vayomer, and he says, Ani Roya Megillah Afa. I see a folded Megillah, the Torah, right? And Arka Esrim Ba'ama V'Rachva Eser Ba'ama. So it was 20 amos by 10. That was it. Now, what's the drasha here? So now, now, if you unfold it, so it says folded, it was 20 by 10. So you unfold it, it's now 20 by 20. Look, Stephen says over there, it was written on the inside and the outside. So now, basically, it's a two-sided. So two-sided is basically the same, right? One page double-sided is like two sheets. So you have to go ahead and basically separate it. So when you go ahead and separate it, how much is it? And now it's 40 by 20, right? Because there's two sides of 20 by 20, which is 40 by 20. So 40 by 20 is how much? 800, right? 800. So there's 800 amos, square amos. Uksiv, mimadad, b'shalo, mayim, b'shamayim, b'zeres, tiken. When he measured, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he measured the sea, right, and the shamayim, right, he did it with his zeres, Now, a zeres is basically a fist, right, which is, now a zeres is, I believe, half of an amma. Zeres is half of an amma, I believe, right? Zeres is half of an amma. I think maybe it's long. Maybe it's like this. I think it's the edge from like pinky to hand. So now that is half an amma. So now you know that when it comes to square, right? So if you have it like a 1 by 1, and if it's only a quarter of it, right, is half by half, that's actually it's not half the size of the total. It's 25%, right? Because imagine something is, let's say, 2 by 2. So 2 by 2 is 4. And if you take half it, 1 by 1 is only 1 times 1 is 1, right? So that's 1 versus 4, so it's 25%. So too. So we said, yeah.
So Hashem's fist is literally the size of the sea.
Well, not his fist, but that which was measured, right? Whatever this measurement of Shemayim was called a zeras, right? Which is like a half amma. So the heavens and the seas were a half amma by a half amma, right? And that, right, and by us, so that was, and we said over here and so zeres, a half an amma by half amma is what? Is 25%. So if that was 25%, so that therefore that which we said was, the 25% of the sky is basically 25% of the Torah, and therefore the Torah in terms of those measurements would be 3,200. So therefore it was basically 3,200 times, right, the size of, because it was 800 amos. So basically 800 amos times 4 is the size of the Torah, which would be 3,200, right, times greater than the heaven and the earth. So that was the size of the Torah.
What does that mean? That means a real scroll that's rolled out? That means all the letters combined? What is that? What are we talking about? Sorry.
So it's referring to all the Torah Sheba'al Peh and the Torah Sheba'Chsav. So whatever it means, the size of the Torah, we describe the Torah as being infinite, right? So it was always listed as infinite by David, right? By who was it? So by David, by Yecheskel, by Eov, they never gave a measurement to the Torah. Here's the first time it gave a measurement, right? Because over here it said it was a certain size, and it also described the heavens and the earth. So, but the size that's given to the Torah was 3,200 times larger than that which was described as the size of heaven and the earth. What does that mean? I'm sure there's a lot of Kabbalistic and mystical explanations in this. I'm sorry?
Torah Sheba'al Peh is bigger than Shemayim and the sea?
Yeah, right. So the Torah altogether, Torah Sheba'al Peh, was 3,200 times larger than that, right?
Wow.
It's whatever, drush, if the darshan. So, fine. Let's see. Rav Chisda lands from the bottom. So Darish Mari Barmar, right? There were 2 pots of figs. So they were before the Heichal Hashem. So Adur Echa Teinim Taiba Ismael Kateine Habachura. So the first one of the pots of figs were those select very good figs. Turn the page. And the Hadur Echa, and the other one is Teinim Rav Ismael, the bad ones. Right? They couldn't be eaten because they were spoiled. Now, Teinim HaToivas Elu Tzadik and Gemurim. The Teinim HaToivas referring to Tzadik and Gemurim. Teinim HaRayis Elu Rishayim Gemurim. Those Rishayim Gemurim. Shema Toimar Avad Sivra Bata Sichiam. Right? In other words, that once they go bad, it's no longer good, and therefore the Rishayim basically, and this is referring to the different exiles, and basically those who were Rishayim who were exiled later through suffering, right, to Bavel, the second group who went out, maybe those were lost for good. They all gave a pleasant aroma. So in the future, both of them will give. So even the Rishayim, even those who went out through suffering, those in the future will return and not be Rishayim. And Darash Rabba, right, they gave off a smell. So that was referring to the Bechor Yisrael, the young Bachram that did not taste the taste of sin. Vial Pisachenu Kol Megadim, and it said that all their Pesachim, all their doors were different types of fruits. So Elu Benos Yisrael Shemagidim B'Sicham LeBalei. These were basically the Benos Yisrael, the daughters of Israel, right, who would tell their husbands, I guess, when they would be mutter to be with them, and when they would be a nida, and lashon acher she'oigdas pischein lebaleim. In other words, they had their psachim, right, they'd only be with their husbands and nobody else. And chadashim gam yishanim doidi tzvanti lecha. So he says also, my new ones are just like my old ones; they're hidden from you. So amarti hakas Yisrael lifnei Kadosh Baruch Hu Ribboni Shalom harbe gezeras gazarti al atzmi. Right, so he said, I made many xeris on me. Right, now it was more than you commanded me. We added to that in order for us to safeguard that which was given to us. So there was more that we did. That was we did more than was expected of us. As Amar Lei Rav Chisda Lahov Midrabban Zahavi Kamasader got to come in one time. Rav Chisda said to someone who was darshaning, I got in front of him. He said, "Mish Milcha Chadashim Gam Yishanim Ma'u." So have you heard what it's referring to? It says the new ones are like the old ones. Amar Lei Eila Mitzvos Kalos Veila Mitzvos Chomeros. Those are referring to light mitzvahs and heavy mitzvahs. So Amar Lei Chitar Pamim Nit. Know what I mean? There were some mitzvahs were given first, and other mitzvahs were given later on. All the Torah is all given together. Even the hard ones, the easier ones, is all together. Ella. Rather, these were from Divrei Torah and these are Divrei Sofrim. In other words, yes, the Divrei Torah came first. Those are the old ones. And the new ones are referring to the Divrei Sofrim. Those are the Rabbanans given by Chazal. And Darash Rabba Ma'idich was the pasuk meaning the Yaiser Mehema B'ni Hizer Asay Sfarim Harbe. And more than this, right? You should be careful, right, of the many books. So B'ni Hizer B'divrei Sofrim Yaiser B'divrei Torah, right? You should be more careful of the words of Sofrim more than B'divrei Torah. Divrei Torah Yesh B'em Asay V'Leis Say. When it comes to Divrei Torah, so it says if there you violate the words of Torah, so you get Malchus, you don't get Malchus, whatever the punishment is given. However, with Divrei Sofrim, when it comes to Rabbanans, Kol Ha'Over Al Divrei Sofrim Chayiv Misa. Whoever's over in the Rabbanans is Chayiv Misa, but Shemayim is Chayiv for a heavenly punishment. Right, a misa, right? Shema tamar im yesh behen mamish mipei ma'lo nichtav. If that's the case, they say, okay, if it's so important, why didn't the Torah give them? Right, if it's so important, why did Hashem give it? Right? Samakra, the pasuk says, also svarim harbe in case. Right? In other words, if that's the case, then there will be so many books, and therefore there will be without end, and therefore there would have been too much. So therefore, it only gave a certain amount, and only others were added on by the Rabbanan. V'lohog harbe yigias basar. What does this mean? Right? If you learn, right? If you learn a lot, then I guess the basar will be tired. So Amra Papa Berei the Rav Acha bar Ad Mishmei the Rav Acha bar Ula Malamed Shakol Amalig Al Divrei Chamim Nidon B'Tzar Rasachas. A person who goes ahead and he makes fun of the words of Chamim, he will go ahead and basically burn in burning tzoah, burning feces. So the says, "I'm asking Rava, miksiv log." Doesn't say log to make fun of, right? It says lahag ksiv, right? It says with a hey, now with an ayin. Ella kol ha'hege behen toyem tambas. Right? That means whoever learns from them, whoever toils in them, he will basically taste the taste of meat. Fine. Now comes the ma'aseh. Tana Rabban. Ma'aseh b'Rav Akiva she'achavish beis ha'yisurim. Rabbi Akiva, when he was locked up. Right, in his older years, he was locked up in the Beis HaYisurim. V'haya Rabbi Yeshua Hagarsi Misharta. Rabbi Yeshua Hagarsi used to go ahead and serve him. So b'chol yom v'yom haya b'chistal mayim b'mida. Every day he would measure a certain amount of cup or whatever it was to bring it to Rabbi Kiva. So yayim echad matzu shaymer Beis HaYisurim. One time he was caught by one of the guards. So Amrlo hayom imecha beruben. You have too much water today. Shema lachtar Beis HaYisurim atatzarech. Maybe you're going to use that water to go ahead and basically help yourself dig out of jail and help Rabbi Kiva escape. So shafach chatzin v'naisin chatzin. Okay, you can only take half of it and pour out half of it, and the rest you can go ahead and take it for him to drink. Shabbat, it's Rabbi Kiva Amar lo Yeshua. Yeshua, right? You don't know. I'm old. Right, and my life depends on you. Sachli kalaisa ma'ira. So he told him what happened. Is basically Rabbi Kiva was upset there wasn't enough water. So he basically told him what happened. He says no. I had more water, but then I was not allowed to go ahead and bring all the water inside. So okay, at least give me the water. I'll take the half cup of water and I'll use it to go wash my hands. So what? I understand it's not even enough for you to drink all of it, so you're going to use it to wash your hands. He said, if I don't go ahead and wash my hands before I eat bread, right? Right? Mutav amos misa satzmi v'lo'ever al das chaveri. Right? Better for me to go ahead and basically cause myself, right, to go ahead and die than to violate the words of my chaverim of the Rabban. So Amru loitam klum ad she'evi le'mayim. He didn't do anything until they brought him water. V'natal yad, then he washed his hands. When they heard this, Amru mab zignisa v'kach. Imagine this was his strength, right, during his older years. Imagine the strength that he had in his younger years. Certainly, this is how he acts when he's in the Beis HaYisurim. If he was not in the Beis HaYisurim, imagine what type of kaichas, what type of power he would have had. And Amar Rabbi Yehuda or Shmuel b'shash shetikin Shlomo Eruvin Tilasedayim. When Shlomo, two of his big takanas were Eruvin, the halachas that we're discussing of Eruvin and Netilas Yadayim. Both of them were instituted by Shlomo Melech. And Yotza Baskel, V'amar Baskel came out and said, B'ni im chacham libech, right, yismach libi gamani. Right, he says, my son, right, if your heart is smart, is wise, then my heart will also rejoice with you. In other words, if this seems to be good, then I'll bless it. V'emer chacham b'yismach libi v'ashiva charfi dovar. So it says, be smart and be happy, or excuse me, Chacham Bini, right? He's wise, V'samech libi, and my heart is happy. All right, and then I will answer those people who disgrace me, right? And Darash Rav Ma'idich what does the pasuk mean? L'cha daidi neitze asada nalina bikfar, right? So he says, "Come, my beloved, my dovdi, right? And let's go to the field and live out in kfarim, in villages." So nashkim lekarami, let's go early to the vineyards, right? Nira in parcha gefen, see if basically the clusters or the vines have started parcha gefen, if they've started to open up, they've become flowers, right? And Pidach Hasamdar Hanetze Rimonim Shametin as Daidilach, right? And also see if the grapes have started, right? And the pomegranates have started. And then over there, I will give you Daidilach, right? I'll give you my love. So what does this mean? L'chad Daidi Netze is What does it mean? Well, let's go out to the field. So Amar Kasas Yisrael Lifnei Kadosh Baruch Hu. So Bnei Yisrael say Kadosh Baruch Hu Ribono Shalom. Right? Don't judge me like those of the cities. Sheyesh Behem Gezel, Varayis, V'Shua, V'Shua. They have all these different averas of stealing, of arayis, of false promises. Neitze hasada. Let's go on the field. Let me go ahead and show you Talmid Chachamim who are going ahead and who are learning Torah from difficulty, from poverty. Now, Lina Bekfarim, let's go ahead and rejoice, right, in the villages, right, or Nailila, right, Lean, right, live in the Kfarim. Atiki Bekfarim, Ella Bekaifrim, right, it means Bekaifrim, those people who basically reject Hashem. Barecha Aisam Sheishpata Lahem Taiva, Vehain Kafir Bechad, right, let me show you those, as the Talmid Chachamim we said are learning from poverty, and I'll show you those people who have rejected your ways, and they are living, very happily with money. So nashkima lekrami. Let's go to early to the krami, to the vineyards. So elu bate knisas bate midrashos. This is referring to the shuls and the base medrashos. And nira in parachan agef. We'll see if the flowers have started on the vines. So elu bale mikra. Those are those who learn mikra. And pita chasander, or the grapes, the buds come out. So elu bale mishnah. Those learn mishnah. Hanetze remona, the pomegranates. Elu bale gemara. Those who learn the gemara. So Sham etain as dodelach, and over there I'll give you love. Arecha kavaidi v'gedoyle shevach bani v'noisai. Right, and over there, right, I will show you the greatness, and then you'll bless all your b'nai v'noisai, your sons and your daughters. And Amar Rav Nuna, my dechsi, what does the pasuk means? Vayidaber shleishes alafim mashal, vayi shiro chamisha ve'alaf. It says he spoke 3,000 mashalim. And the song was 1,005. So Malamed Shamar Shlama called Davar Shal Torah Shleish Alafim Mashal. Now called Davar Shal Seifrim Chamisha Ve'Elaf Tamis. This is everything that was Davar Torah. Shlomo would give over 3,000 mashalim, parables, and anything that was from Divrei Seifrim, he would give over 1,005 reasons. And Darash Rav Ma'idich, what does the pasuk mean? The Yisashaya Koheles Chacham Oy Lime Das Asam V'Even V'Chiker Tikei Mishalim Harbe. It says more than Koheles. Shlomo was another name for Shlomo Melech. Then, in addition for him being being a Chacham, right? He also knew how to go ahead and listen and teach the people. So Lime Das Asam. So Da'agmere B'Simani Tamim. He would even teach them the ways of Torah Asperach B'Mai D'Damile, and he would explain to them through what was similar to it. Through the simanim, it says v'izen chiker tikein mishalim harbe, and he taught them mishalim. So Amar Ula Amar Rabbi Lazar b'tchila haisa Torah daimel kfifa she'la aznai. In the beginning, it was like a pot without any handles. Ad sheba Shlomo v'rasa aznai, until Shlomo Melech came and basically made handles to the pot. Basically, gave reasons and understanding to the people. And kavutzoisav tal talim. It says over there. I guess his hair was like it was wavy. So Amar Rav Chiza Amar Ukva Melamed Sheyesh Lidrosh Al Kol Kites V'Kites Tileim Shel Halachos. Right, that each and every point, right, point of the of Torah, you can teach mountains of halachos. And it says Shecharis Kairim and black like a raven. So with which type of people can you go ahead and find this? So b'mi Shemashkim v'ma'arviv alei on the base of medrash. People come early and late when it's dark out to the base of medrash. And Rabbi Omar b'misha hishchir panav aleim kairim. A person basically darkens his face. who darkens his face, I guess, from learning, such a person will be blessed. And finally, Rav Omar, Misha Mesim Atzmo Achzari Al Banav Al Bnei Beisakar, a person who's basically, he's tough on his kids, right? Just like an Arev, I guess, is tough with their kids. Kiha, the Rav Bar Masna, because of baby Rav, he would go to learn in the yeshiva in the morning. So Amr Lei, the Visiu, his wife said to him, your kids are hungry. What are they going to eat? You're going to the base to learn. What should your kids eat? So Amr Lei told her, Mishlime kurme bagma, right? Are the weeds or whatever is growing out in the marsh, are those gone? No, they're not gone. Go ahead and just, go ahead and feed them from the fields, whatever is growing out there, and they could eat from there, even though it's not such a, hearty meal. All right, we'll stop here. Yeshikayach, everybody. Have a wonderful day. And, we're making our way through Eruvin, almost, 3 weeks in. Shkayach.